Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with another episode of the Market Monday. This week I just want to talk about the reserve list and one of my best specs ever in anticipation for Marcel. If you remember that video that I did when the Commander 2017 was spoiled, I suggested that you spec into the Marcel, which I still think there's some good targets with Marcel. I'll show you a few of them in a second with this video. I'm also going to be transparent of what I've been investing in, at what price, and where I got out of them. So anyway, this is one of my best specs in a long time, as it exceeded my expectations a tenfold. I really thought that this card was just going to be a quick triple up or double up. Maybe the long term, within a year, the Marcel decks would. I thought that people would first have to build Indala and get bored of Indala and then go on to Marcel, and then Shaku Endbringer would be a card that they'd buy into, and then slowly over time I could start unloading these for $2 to $3, maybe the long term $4. Well, I sold out between $6 and $9 with Shaku Endbringer, and it spiked up very, very quickly. So you can see I only got 14 of them. I wish I would have gone all in on this. I was a little bit hesitant because, like I said, I thought it would take a long time to make my money back. So anyway, this is where we started selling them out, and the majority of them I think we did sell, like at least over half of them, around the $6 mark. So it was in between this spike that we sold the next ones, and then was able to sell a few of them, I think 3 or 4 of them, for around the $9. So it was just, that was a great investment, and quicker than I expected. So now I'm all in the reserve list hype. A few other cards that we'll show. We'll just go over my order history real quick of what I've been specking into. This one's another one. In August, I went into Phyrexian Devourers between, man, I got into him. Well, this one's misleading because it costs $2 for 2 for 3. So this ended up being what? So you have to tack on another $4 a piece for Phyrexian Devourers, $5.38, $5.47, $5, $4, more like $5 there, for some Phyrexian Devourers in anticipation for Marcel using Phyrexian Devourer, because it is one of the infinite combos with the Marcel and like Walking Ballista. And so you can see it's already up to about a $7 mark. So that's a pretty good investment. Again, I think this one's going to be the next one to kind of go crazy because this card already had demand beforehand. I know Mimeoplasm likes it. I think it's Grenzo. Grenzo likes this card too. So there's a lot of commanders that just abuse the Phyrexian Devourer. And what's another card? The Marchesa, I think, uses this, Marchesa. But it's really good in Mimeoplasm. It's really good in decks that can actually copy the activated ability. So I think, yeah, so think of cards like, or decks like the Experimental Crage. Those type of decks love this card. So I mean, there already was some demand for a while. What came out here? There had to be something, Shadows of Innistrad, Oath of Gatewatch, that actually broke this as well. Huh. Wonder what it was out of Shadows that actually paired well with the Phyrexian Devourer. But anyway, yeah, so you can see that it's on a good trajectory. A few other cards I've been specking into. We'll dig through times there. Yeah, I guess this will be just an episode of transparency. Let's get to the... Let's see here. Marionette Masters, I've been going all in just because so many people have been tweeting about them, and I have a deck that have been running, so I bought a ton of Marionette Masters. I highly warn you about this, though, because just this sheer amount of Kaladesh cards out there, Marionette Master really needs to do very well at Worlds or start to get a lot more play than it is right now. But there are so many different ways that people are abusing Marionette Master right now. I run it in a God Pharaoh's Gift deck. A lot of people run it in a Treasure Map deck, as well as a Spell Swindle. There's tons of ways that Marionette Master is just being abused in the minute. I bought into Core Spirit Dancers and Daybreak Cornets in anticipation of Iconic Masters reprinting the land. Why can't I think of the land? The green-white land that you can sack to draw a card, because I think that Bogos is going to be a very budget deck once that comes out, so you might as well pick up these pieces. That's just the nature of the game. If a card is reprinted, if it takes the price down of a card, other cards go up. You could look at some Soul Sisters staples too. Possibly like the Ranger could go up because of Soul Sisters becoming very, very inexpensive. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Oh, we need to look at page 1. I went back there. And this gets us to the topic that I'm talking about today, which is reserve list. I decided to spend a hefty chunk of change buying some reserve list cards. The Silver Wyvern's kind of cool because it goes in Marcel. It gives it ability to not be able to be targeted for a turn. Circle of Despair is just a cool card. We'll look at all these cards in a second. You can see that I really targeted the cards under 50 cents, reserve list cards that are under 50 cents. Under $1 really was where I targeted. And for this episode, we're going to talk about cards under $2 because I think there's some beauty still. And here's a little tip too, if you're on TCG Player, like Ritual Machine, this guy had him for 45 cents. The next highest copy was $3. And the only way I could order these is if I tacked on a few other cards. So that's where these Chance to Take a Will Breaker, Grim Harrispec, Hurry just threw in some cards to put me over the $2 mark to be able to actually order this. So that's just a tip for TCG Player. So again, just a bunch of reserve list cards in this kind of sweet spot. There's some goodies. There's some terrible reserve list cards that have no chance of ever seeing play. The ones that I targeted have the chance of actually seeing play or have at least some demand from Modern or from EDH. And a lot of these cards are just education cards. What I mean by that is people just have to realize what they do, and then they can easily go in decks. I tweeted out about Null Chamber when I was kind of scouring over reserve list card. Null Chamber is a really cool card in EDH. It allows you to name a card. You and target opponent name a card, and those cards cannot be played. So you make an ally with one of the people at the table to both name the opposite player's commanders, and neither one of them can be cast as long as Null Chamber exists. Again, we'll look at over all of those, and you can just see that I basically bought a bunch of copies of all of the cards that I think have any sort of playability left, because I don't think there's a lot of time left for reserve list cards, and I'll show you why here in a second. So to put my money where my mouth is too, you can see on CardSphere I have put at the sweet spot the 71%. Why 71%? Well, go over to this send here, and it's because the defaults. So let's go back over to send, and the defaults is high, lower, offers 70% and lower. So if you put it 71%, they'll show up in everyone's packages. Otherwise, they have to kind of mess with the defaults. You can go back to like 50%, but I believe that's where it hits, is the 70%. That's where it defaulted on mine. And, you know, a lot of people don't mess with these. They just, you know, go to it, and this will show up now. If you put it at the negative 29%, I guess you could put it negative 30%, but negative 29% puts it at 71%, and that's what will show up in people's send lists. So anyway, let's go back to my wants here on CardSphere. CardSphere's been working out phenomenally for me, by the way. Actually starting to find a lot of packages, especially foils, at the 85%, 90%. If you remember one of my Market Mondays where I talked about CardSphere, anything above 80% is kind of like a bonus, just because if you're competing with eBay TCG Player, 80% is where you'd get off of like eBay TCG Player after fees. So 80-85% is kind of the staple there. And even on lower cards, it's a lot. That's anything above, I would say 70% is a bonus. So CardSphere is messing around with how they want to do their pricing. A lot of people want to do internal pricing based upon internal CardSphere demand. But a lot of people like myself want it to be anchored to like TCG Player, eBay, other external markets, just to give people a kind of a good baseline. The problem with, and I agree with CardSphere here, is there are so many people, casual players, people that don't understand markets, that are just plain insane because they refuse to send off a card that's lower than 100% because they don't want to get ripped off. Well, it's just, it's a whole theory in psychology called memetics, I believe, is the study of markets, or the study of how human psychology impacts market. And you'd be surprised at all of these. I can't remember the concept of where people are, is it called aversion? No. I'm gonna have to look it up again, with where people are more likely to hold on to something than buy something. So I talked about this in another Market Monday video where it used to drive me insane when I would need cards and someone would have a playset of them, and I'm like, hey, can I buy your playset? I need it for a standard deck. And they're like, no. I'm like, I'll offer, 10% over. I'll offer 20% over market value because I need them for standard. Like, no, I want to keep my playset. And then I'd be like, well, I guess if I can't play my deck, I have this other playset of this card. Will you buy it from me for 120%? Like, no, I won't do that. Why not? Because I already have 4 of. Well, you're already doing that missed opportunity. If you don't sell something at a good price, it's like buying it. It's a missed opportunity. And it's just human psychology that a lot of people are more likely to avoid or not pursue positive benefits than they are to avoid negative benefits. So anyone, if they know that, I used to study this crap like crazy, but I need to go back to psychology. Used to be a huge pastime of mine, and then I kind of just got bored of it over time. But anyway, I think this kind of affects CardSphere the same way, where people see this cut, and they're like, no, I'm not going to send a card that's 29% below market value, when it's, if they did it internally, you'd see a card was 100% because they'd base it on like the last 10 trades or last 20 trades or last 100 trades to give kind of a market price. And I don't know. I think CardSphere, if they could somehow maybe incorporate both of those, maybe right here, they could put like the last 10 trades, the average last 10 trades in their, maybe match the last, like kind of how TCG Player did a market price, and maybe that'd work out better. So CardSphere has a lot of room to grow, a lot of ways to go before it's perfect. But what I really like about CardSphere is the people that are running it are awesome. They are just a pleasure to communicate with. I know I've made pretty good relationships with them on Twitter and whatnot. So I trust them a lot, which is the exact opposite of PucaTrade. If there was one thing I hate about PucaTrade, was the lack of transparency. Whenever they were met with criticism, they just called me names, and rather than go after my argument, they just went after me as a person. And even I was in Skype calls with PucaTrade, and because they wanted to get my input, but they didn't really want to get my input. They just wanted me to be a cheerleader for them, and it was pathetic. I should have recorded I went into the Skype call. I don't want to do anything shady like record Skype calls and things like that, but it was absolutely pathetic when I was in the Skype call, when they would just dismissed everything I said. And basically everything in those Skype calls have come to pass. Yeah, but it was pathetic. They didn't want my input. They wanted me to just be their cheerleader. They wanted somehow to not bribe me. It was almost like bully me into becoming a PucaTrade cheerleader for them. I don't know. But anyway, that's water under the bridge. I'm going to quit talking about them because they're irrelevant. It's just a joke of a service now. But I do like CardSphere. It has worked out really, really well for me. Just quickly, I know I've gone over these in the past, but you can see kind of my last trades here. Been able to unload like just a bunch of bulky cards for 18, 17, 13 cents, which is awesome. You can make a package of these. It's something like these foils. Been able to get better cuts off of this than I would be these invocations. We actually compared before I sent these off. These have been rotting in my case. We have a glass case you've seen at my store, and these low-end invocations, we actually checked TCG what we could sell it at right now, and most of these were a good $4 more that I could send them off on CardSphere, and so that was a really good trade up. Then you can get cards for about the exact opposite too. So I was able to get Cyclonic Rift. I think the lowest you can get Cyclonic Rift. You can get them at this, but you have to really shop around on TCG Player. And now when I can buy from TCG Player, the only time I use TCG Player now instead of CardSphere is when I want the cards right now, because you can't guarantee that you're going to get cards from CardSphere. You have to wait. And so you have to play the waiting game and put up like I do. I have over 7,000 wants on CardSphere, and I just hope that someone actually will send me some cards. So anyway, you can see right here some of my history. I've had a lot of success with CardSphere, as you can see. I think I've traded over $400-500 worth of cards. So anyway, that is what I'll be talking about CardSphere. But let's go back now to the nitty-gritty of the Market Monday, which is talking about opportunities for reserve lists. So where I like, the sweet spot I like right now is under $2. And a lot of these do have some anything above $1, I would say, on the reserve list actually does see some sort of play. And there are a few of them that I really like under the dollar mark. So you just, the lowest one right now that I do like is Silver Wyvern. Silver Wyvern, I think, has a good enough ability for the experimental Kraj decks, for the Marcel type decks. And the more they print of this commander, the better. The more stuff that copies abilities of cards in graveyards, cards you exile like Marcel, cards that have +1/+1 counters on them like experimental Kraj. You know, this doesn't see a lot of play, and we can look in EDH Rec and you can see that it's a lot of these only have like 100 copies, but it's just education, and the artwork's pretty sweet on this card too. But the more and more people actually do play with this card, the more it has to go up. Why I like reserve list is there are definitely different pressures buying at the reserve list. There are people collecting sets that need one of each card, and so there's one card out of the market. Then there are people that are just buying up the reserve list because they think it's the safest thing ever. And now you can see there's no reserve list card under 29 cents. So they're right there. There are a lot of people that are buying up. That isn't creating real demand. It's just creating the speculation. They're wanting to sell it back in the market. And then there are actually people that are using them for decks. And so I like to actually find the cards that are using them for a deck, and then it has all three of those pressures, and it's just bound to go up. So Silver Wyvern, I think, is one of the few ones left that is actually playable. Because if you look at Dark Pact, I believe, is one of those anti-cards, yep. And then Keeper of Treasure Horn is terrible. It's a 6/6 for 6 mana, and when it's not blocked, players just lose 2 life rather than take 6 damage. So awful card, a 6/6 for 6. And then you have the Silver Wyvern that has a 4/3 and target spell ability, which targets only Silver Wyvern, targets another creature of your choice instead. And so it's hexproof-ish, but I mean, people aren't going to target this because you can redirect it. I think that's a pretty sweet ability with the Silver Wyvern. I don't know, again, if Experimental Kraj or Marcel wants it, but it definitely is an option for those type of decks. If there ever is like a Drake tribal deck, you never know, this could actually go in it because it's there. It's playable, which is more you can say for most of these cards down there. Even like Farmstead is pretty bad. Wave of Terror is pretty terrible. Actually, Wave of Terror is not bad. Now I'm looking at Wave of Terror. At the end of your upkeep, bury each creature with converted casting cost equal to Wave of Terror's last cumulative upkeep. So it'll bury all tokens. No. It will bury everything 1 or less, then 2 or less. So is it the Dredge card? Very similar to the Dredge card. So this one's kind of playable too with the Wave of Terror. I'm surprised it didn't actually... Did I invest in Wave of Terror? I did not. Huh. I had it here and then I crossed it out. I kind of like it though. It is Weatherlight, so it's one of the later reserve lists. But so anyway, instead of going through these, I've kind of combed over the ones that I've been investing in. So the first one I invested in was, see if I've got in any sort of, maybe some of these have gone up in value. Like on this 35 cent, there's a lot of garbage. A lot of garbage here. A lot of text on a lot of these cards that are just completely unplayable. I mean, Ication Lieutenant's not that great either, and a Tribal Soldier deck sort of, but there's so many better ways to play it. Like, these are pretty bad. So the first one I invested in is the Spoils of War. See if we can come across it. Yeah, a lot of these 35 cents is completely ignored. Yeah, they're all terrible up in this first part. So let's find these Spoils of War. There's the Spoils of War. So currently it's going for 41 cents. So if you can read this, it says, let's zoom in a little bit. The Spoils of War says put X plus 1/1 counters on any number of target creatures, distribute any way you choose, where X is equal number of creatures and artifacts in target opponent's graveyard. What's really cool about this is cards like, so it has synergy with a card called Willbreaker. This is whenever a card is targeted, you gain control of it. And there are also a lot of other commanders that deal with targeting creatures or your opponent's control, creatures you control, because it doesn't care where it goes. So if there's ever a commander that actually deals with +1s with counters, A, which there is in the past, you know, we have the Whiny Constrictor type things, and B, just getting them targeted, this is a pretty good card. And if you check EDH Rec, there is a few decks that actually play it, but Will Breaker was a perfect one because you can distribute it however way you choose. So you don't have to divide, you can distribute. So you can actually target as many cards because X isn't the targets, X is the +1 with counters. Now you have to do X equal to how many cards are in an opponent's graveyard, but X can be 0, and then I believe you can target as many creatures as you want, and then you distribute 0 counters. And so it's a really, really effective card for that. And so I think that card is actually relevant. The next one, if we go up here, is, man, this has actually changed since I have done it, is Prismatic Lace. I'm just going to use the find feature. So Prismatic Lace is target permanent becomes the color or colors of your choice. Cost to tap, maintain, or use this ability if the permanent remains unchanged. It gets a lot more effective with commanders that actually deal with color, and it actually has some combos. Yeah, there's some pretty crazy stuff you can do with Prismatic Lace. So I like these type of cards. You never know when it's the next Shaku, that it's just broken because a commander deck wants, every commander deck that gets printed out wants this. So maybe in 2018 Commanders, something wants this. It will spike up from the 37 cents to that $9 mark. And so this is perfect of what I'm trying to do. Trying to find a relevant ability on a reserve list card. The next one that I am investing in is Triangle of War. And this one had a cool little ability because it's fight. And so imagine if there's ever a Phyrexian Obliterator type ability where you want the only cards that really have fight abilities is the red and white, or red and green. White sometimes has some, and black sometimes has some as well. But for example, if you ever get a card that wants to fight, and there's tons of them, Death Touchers, gain controllers type things, whenever like deal combat damage to something, do something. You think of Stuffy Doll, think of, again, Phyrexian Obliterator. This card works perfectly with those type of cards. And so there's got to be a Phyrexian Obliterator commander type deck. Again, if there ever is a commander that does something similar to that, this is going to go in every one of those decks. So I really like Triangle of War for that. Of course, the one that I've been going all in on is Null Chamber, because this is a card that just requires education. And then I believe people actually will use this in the deck. So think of Daxos the Returned, or any other enchantment-based deck, any Pillow Fort-based deck. This card is just really, really sweet. It says you and target opponent each name a card except for a basic land. Those cards cannot be played. It actually got rid of when they errated it from target opponent. It's just, when it comes into play, choose an opponent. You and that opponent each name a card. Those cards cannot be played. Yes, an opponent can backstab you, but a lot of times you're going to be playing this in a deck that maybe, like if Daxos, you already have Daxos out, and you can shut down two. So say your opponent's playing Krenko and Animar, and the other opponent's playing a kind of benign commander. You can say, hey, name those two, and they can't be played now. And again, if they're in colors that can't get rid of this Null Chamber, that's just brutal. That is so rough for the opponent to deal with. So I think Null Chamber is just an education card. I don't know if a commander, Daxos should have been the card that spiked this card in value. Daxos was just a very unpopular. Everyone was into the blue-red and the white, or the black-green, the Marin and the Niv Mizzix decks was the two decks that were popular. And a lot of people that wanted Daxos were really wanting to build Karlov. And so it's kind of a miss for that pre-con deck. But I think the more people actually learn, it's surprising the lack of amount of Null Chambers in Daxos, where I think that it should go in almost every deck. Because not only it curves with Daxos, it's just a pretty powerful card in Commander in general, and a fun card in general. So cards like this are perfect. The next one is Unfulfilled Desires. This one I think is pretty cool because, again, it's an enchantment where you can pay 1 life, draw a card, then choose and discard a card. I like this in Sidisi. The new god, the Scarab god, it can work in. Yeah, you could say there's better ways to do this, but not for really Sidisi. Sidisi triggers every time a creature goes to your graveyard. You get a zombie, and it only does 1 per instance of mill, and so, or 1 per instance of a card going to the graveyard from anywhere. And this also triggers off anything that discards cards, which actually could be relevant. It's just pay 1 life, draw a card, discard a card. That's a pretty relevant little ability on an enchantment. Can be traded up for Zur. I don't know if Zur actually wants it, but anything that utilizes their graveyard, I think this is a great card to be broken, because it's very, very cheap for just one life and one colorless mana. The next one I'm in is the Gutha's Scepter. So this one, it says, and this one's going for 50 cents, if it leaves play or you lose control of it, those cards go into your graveyard. But this card's kind of cool. If I could actually see this seeing play in Legacy as a way to stop if a big attrition deck came into play. So it says put any card from your hand face down under the scepter. You may look at those cards, and then tap. You can return any card under the scepter to your hand. So it can protect you against like Thought Seizes and Inquisitions. I don't know. It's just a unique enough ability. Alliances was dismally printed that I do like this card as a spec. I don't know if it's as good as the other ones, but it definitely is a card that I'm interested in. The next one is Infernal Denizen right above it. This one is another card that I could see this going up in value just for the Marcel deck. So I apologize for the text, these old cards. So anyway, you have to sacrifice 2 swamps during your upkeep, or target opponent gains control of a creature you control. So it's a terrible card to play. This is a perfect card to gain the ability of. So in the Necrotic Ooze, the Marcel decks, it says tap, gain control of target creature. You lose control of it if Infernal Denizen leaves play. So for Marcel, you can gain control of a card. There's better ways out of blue since you are in Marcel, but again, if another card is ever printed like it, Necrotic Ooze comes to mind, this becomes a pretty good little card. The converted mana cost matters, the 8 mana, because there are some commanders. I'll have to show you my, is it Volrath deck that utilizes cards with high converted mana cost, and that's all you care about them. And you want everything to be at least 8, because that means with 2 cards you can one-shot an opponent. I'll show you that deck tech sometime in the future. But this is a pretty sweet card for that type of deck. Again, you're never going to be playing this. You're just trying to get the advantage of this is the high converted mana cost, the activated ability, which a lot of EDH cards do have ways to abuse. The next one is Soraya the Falconer. Soraya the Falconer, I think it's been errated to all birds get +1/+1. So it's just a bird commander. I think that's relevant enough. Enough said there. The next one is the Aphaya Grove. The Aphaya Grove is kind of cool because it works with decks like Animar that want +1/+1 counters on stuff. I necessarily don't like it in Animar because it takes a whole turn to put another +1/+1 counter. But Experimental Crage, this is kind of a cool deck. I think I do have it in my Experimental Crage because Experimental Crage gains all the activated abilities of creatures with +1/+1 counters. And so you're distributing a lot of counters on different creatures. And then when you play the Experimental Crage, it gains all those abilities. And a lot of times you can just go nuts with it. The next one I like is the Circle of Despair. This one I like a lot. It's another education card, as hopefully it will load up here. We'll click on it here. Sometimes the... Uh-oh, hopefully I didn't lose my internet. So loading the card. What this does, I believe, we'll wait till this loads. We'll come back to it. The next one we want to talk about is Asmira, the Holy Avenger. This one's kind of cool because I think that this is actually a legit commander. I'm actually going to do a deck tech with Asmira, building around Eldrazi Scions and Eldrazi Spawns. It's flying 2/3. At the end of each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and for each creature put in your graveyard from play this turn. I think this is actually legit enough for a commander. I don't think it's one of these, like if you go down the list of other reserve lists, they're pretty terrible. This one with Scions and Spawns, I'm pretty sure on turn you can turn 5 kill someone easily by putting in enough +1/+1 counters, then equipping it to something like Fire Streak, or giving it double strike, or pairing it with the Knight that gives double strike to a card, and then just one-shotting off an opponent. It's legit. There's plenty of commanders like this, and I think this is one it's interesting enough. And I'm going to brew a deck around this just because I want to build a cool reserve list commander. This is one of them that in fact, I want to build all the legit reserve list commanders. I've built a Lord of Treasurehorn deck in the past. We'll talk about that card in a bit. But I really like the Asmira. So Circle of Despair still going on. All right, next one is the Oath of Ghouls. The Oath of Ghouls, I think, is a pretty sweet little ability. Yes, it does have a group hug type effect. During each player's upkeep, if there are more creature cards in that player's graveyard than target opponent, that player returns a creature card from his graveyard hand. So 2 mana, it's a way just to keep filling up your graveyard, or filling up your hand. It works with everyone, though, so keep that in mind. The next one I like is the Carrion. Carrion is another sweet card that I believe just requires education. Instant speed, you can sacrifice a creature to put a number of maggot tokens equal to the creature's power as 0/1 creatures. So think Zulaport Cutthroat and the Blood Artist decks to have like a kind of nice little combo with this. Think of Teysa. Teysa uses black creatures to then create white creatures. You sacrifice something that has, think of like even Phyrexian Dreadnought, that you have that little, that instant where Phyrexian Dreadnought says when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice creatures. So I believe it goes on the stack. I don't think it's an additional to a cost with Phyrexian Dreadnought. Someone correct me if I'm wrong with that, but it's a 12/12 for 1 mana. And when it goes on the stack, you cast this, sacrifice it, you get 12 maggots. And if you have anything to deal like Prosh type decks, Teysa type decks, any deck that's using Perforos in it where it deals damage when things come into play, you can do some pretty insane things with Carrion. So really, really like this card. Again, it's another education card where when people actually learn about it, then I think it will start going in more decks than not. And then if we ever get another Prosh type commander, this is a pretty good card for that deck. All right, so Circle of Despair is loaded now. This is one of them that, again, I think this just requires education. Goes in a lot of the decks that is aforementioned. Goes in Teysa decks, really good in Teysa decks. Goes in Daxos decks. Sacrifice a creature to prevent all damage from any creature or player from any one source. So this is good against taking down those, and it just, I think, yeah, you can just choose a source, right? Does it go target source? We'll have to look at the way that it's actually worded. So if like a commander like a Skittles has hexproof and is trying to infect it away, I think you can prevent all the damage. I'm pretty sure, because you don't choose, you just choose. We'll have to read about that and see if that works. But again, this is this very, very pretty. This is a great little card in Commander. I mean, it will stop a lot of things in their tracks. Pillow Fort, any black-white deck, I think this is good. Anything that is adding creature tokens is pretty good. It's a decent little sack outlet. And yeah, I like it a lot. So let's go on to the next one. We have gone on to Purgatory. There's Purgatory at. Maybe this is one that's actually spiked up since I did this list. It's crazy how quickly these lists move. Oh, there's Purgatory right there. This is another kind of education card. Purgatory is a 4 mana. Whenever a summon card is put into your graveyard from play, put that card face up under Purgatory. So it's very, very similar to Mimic that. During your upkeep, you can pay 4 and 2 life to put that card back into play. I actually like this a lot. If this does leave play, all of them are exiled, but that's a pretty sweet little, like, think of how good Phyrexian Arena is, because it gives you a card per turn. This does cost 4, and you have to do it during your upkeep. But I don't know. I think this is a lot more relevant than a lot better than people give it credit. And you never know. There's a lot of Commander players that like to use old, obscure cards. I know that I have one in our group that just loves to play cards that no one's playing or thinking of. He has whole decks worth of these old legacy cards. There's probably better things in newer sets, but they're still legit. And this is the perfect card that fits that bill. Again, I think this is more of another education type card. Another one I like is the Grim Feast. Grim Feast is kind of cool because you can gain a lot of life. It deals the damage to you once, maybe your upkeep, just 1 damage. But whenever opponent's creature goes to the graveyard, you gain life equal to the toughness. So in Commander, that can gain a lot of life. This one I'm a little not as bullish on this card because it's already pretty high at 62 cents, and there's probably better things to do in other ways to gain life in those colors. All right, the next one is the Paradigm Shift. Paradigm Shift is remove all cards from your library from the game and shuffle your graveyard into your library. This can set up some stupid combos, really stupid combos like Laboratory Maniac combos, or other ways where you just want to guarantee that things are in your graveyard. So think of a lot of cards that have like Buried Alive type effects or anything that puts cards directly into your graveyard. Then you can Paradigm Shift and just win the game right there. The things that just... you can have those. You can tutor up a lot of cards in your graveyard, Paradigm Shift, get the cards you want, cast them, win the game. I think that you're going to see more decks actually play this with more busted things. Again, Laboratory Maniac decks are perfect for it. I think this has a lot more playability than it currently has. All right, so the next one I really, really, really like is, because it's from the dark, is the Eternal Flame. And this is one of the last dark cards that's low. And it's not that bad, and actually goes in a deck that's actually seeing a lot of play right now. It's an option. I don't know if it absolutely goes in that deck. I've tried it, and the problem is I don't play enough mountains. I play too many non-basic lands, but you could easily go down in those and just play basic mountains. And this is Eternal Flame. It's 4 mana and does amount of damage to all of your opponents. That's key. Equal to the number of mountains you control. And it also does half that amount of damage to you. So why I like this is with Nahab. So on turn 5, you could play this, do 5 damage to each of your opponents. Or actually turn 6, do this. And it sets up Nahab to go off on that turn. So I play Nahab pretty competitively. That's one of my favorite commanders. I'll have to do a deck tech on it. And this is definitely an option for it. And it just has a very, very low supply being in the dark. And it's relevant. It has a relevant ability. So it's more powerful than Earthquake if you have the mountains for it. More powerful than Sizzle and other cards that I use in that deck currently. And so I really like this as a spec target. There's not a lot of copies here. The 76 cents is kind of misleading because it's very, very tough to find a copy of this card. And you can blame me for buying at least 4. Most of these cards, as you saw from my order history, I bought like 4 of them recently. All right, the next one that I like is Mystic Decree. Where'd that one go? I think that one has spiked up. Oh, there it is. Mystic Decree. All creatures lose flying and island walk. It's homelands, so there's a lot of supply of this, but it's pretty decent when you're playing other cards like the Island Sanctuary. Then between this and Island Sanctuary, no creature can attack. It is an enchant world though, so the only one can be out. So keep that in mind. The next one I like is Heat Stroke, but I think this one's already spiked up past where you can buy it. I couldn't buy any copies of this. It was completely out of stock on TCG Player. But if they ever come back in stock, at the end of combat, destroy all creatures that blocked or were blocked this turn. Pretty sweet little card in a lot of different decks when you force creatures to block, or you have like a creature that gets some sort of effect when it's not blocked. Think of like the Wildfire Emissary that just came out and cards like that. This is a really, really good card in those. Unfortunately, I think we've missed the mark on that because it has gone up. I like Carnival Souls a lot. Carnival Souls has a lot of... I use this in Teysa, actually. Whenever a creature comes into play, you lose a life and add a black. Why I like this in Teysa is I usually use Soul Sisters with this. So it allows me to infinite combo very, very quickly. Really, really sweet card with the Carnival of Souls. I love this card. I actually need to invest in more of them. I think I forgot to invest in this card. I know I've got copies of this, though. Again, a lot of these cards need a lot of work, but they do actually are relevant. Again, I've done some crazy stuff with this card, with Carnival of Souls. What other deck did I use in? Marquesa. I use it in Marquesa as well. Very, very similar, very, very similar effect with Gravecrawler. So Gravecrawler comes into play, and then you have Blood Artists and Zulbort Cutthroats, and you sack it. Or like my Infinite Memnite combo with changing all your cards into Knights, and with Ashes of the Fallen, or the new card that came out. And then you can just cast it over and over when you have the card that lets you cast Knights from your graveyard. And Carnival of Souls is actually really, really powerful. Yeah, it kind of is terrible whenever it says not a creature you control, so whenever any creature. But a lot of times you have like mana dumps, and you negate this by having any sort of Soul Warden type effect out. And that extra mana is pretty huge. Alrighty, so on next one is Sustaining Spirit. The Sustaining Spirit was also pretty cool. Let's see if we can find... And I apologize for this being a long, long list. Sustaining Spirit is wall damage that would reduce your life to less than 1, reduce it to 1. You can play this when you're ready to infinite combo with a lot of decks that deal damage to you over and over to do something. It doesn't reduce loss of life, though, so... there's that, so you can't go crazy like some of the other cards like Phyrexian Life and whatnot. It's a pretty sweet card, though, for those infinite combos. It does have a low supply now with alliances. It is starting to go up a lot, so if you want to invest in this, you got to hurry on to this. The next one is Phyrexian Marauder. I've played this actually in a legacy deck called It wasn't Cheerios. It was a deck very similar to Cheerios that you wanted creatures to come into play and die. The thing is that when I used to play this Phyrexian Marauder, both the Walking Ballista or the Thopter one, I can't think of the double X cards didn't exist, and so Phyrexian Marauder was the best way to do it. So basically, what you did is you played like cards like Fecundity, I think is what the card is called. Whenever a creature goes to the graveyard, you draw a card, and you just infinite comboed off of, or you cast cards like this, got them all back, kept casting them, and you stormed off. And that's how I played it. So, so you played a bunch of cards where you drew cards when it went to the graveyard, and then there was a card that returned all creatures that went to the graveyard this turn back to your hand, kind of like an eggshell. And you did all. So it was like I could turn one kill with these cards, and Phyrexian Marauder was in the deck because I definitely wanted this card because it killed itself. You only wanted cards that did so. So if a deck comes out like that again, it's pretty sweet. Other than that, it's pretty bad. But you gotta think of any cards that kill themselves for 0 are pretty decent. All right, so the next one is the Tolarian Enchantress. I think this card, I think it might have spiked up. Let's see where it's at right now. Oh, there it is. Tolarian right under it. Wow. The Enchanter is kind of cool. Whenever it's blocked by a creature, gain control of it at the end of combat. This is where you can put lure effects onto it, gain control of all your creature's opponents. It's a wizard, so it's relevant. I think it's gone up just because the wizard decks don't really want it, though, because it's kind of awkward for it. Because it has to be blocked, but you never know when there's a lure type effect on a commander where this might be relevant. And the next one is Ritual of the Machine. I don't think that this one actually, I think this one just spiked up. Yeah, I think this one's not actually buyable. You saw what I had to do to buy one. Sacrifice a creature to gain control of target non-black, non-artifact creature. This is a gain control ability in black. I think it's pretty relevant. You get it forever, 4 mana. Not bad. Pretty sweet card. And the last one or two more I want to talk about is the Lord of Treasurehorn. It's a legit commander from Alliances, 10-4, regenerate. You can use this, so it says when it comes into play, pay 2 life and sacrifice 2 creatures, and target opponent draws 2 cards. That's what you have to do, but you can use cards like Torpor Orb to get around this. Or you just play stuff that sacrifices stuff. And it's a pretty legit commander because it can basically 2-shot anything and has regenerate. I've had fun with it in the past. Yes, it takes some work, but if you build a super good cards to support it, the 10-4 can be legitimate with it. So that's why I like the card. Marcel actually could want this card because it's just a nice little activated regenerate ability. And who knows if it's getting any pressure from that. And then I actually like the Pygmy Hippo. This one's kind of weird, though, because I looked the way that it's worded in the Gatherer, and someone asked, well, in the comment section, will have to tell me if I'm right or wrong. So if Pygmy Hippo attacks and is not blocked, you may choose to have it deal no combat damage. If you do, defend anybody or draws all mana from your lands, and their mana pool is emptied. After combat, add equal amount of colors to your mana pool. So the problem is I know in their attack phase, so in declare attackers, when you declare attacking with Pygmy Hippo, that's when your opponent can tap all their lands. But I believe if it goes to block phase, if they tap, because it says if it attacks and is not blocked, so it's in your block phase, you do that. Then even if they tap all their lands in response, I believe that it drains that. So it's all the leftover mana that they have in their mana pool goes to you at the beginning of your next main phase. So Pygmy Hippo is kind of weird because if they do it during their attack phase, you don't get any benefit. But if you do it during the block phase, I believe you get all of their mana that they didn't use. So I think that's interesting enough. But again, it might not work the way that I think it works. So anyway, those are all my cards under $1. There's a ton of them under $2. I'm just going to name them real quick that I like. Cards like Marrow. Marrow is good right now. Tika's Dragon, Political Trickery. We'll go over the under $2 maybe in another video because this has gone on way long enough at 44 minutes. This is a little bit rough because anything above the $2, the supply is already pretty low of these type of cards. But there is some gems like Natural Balance is really cool in Commander. Multani is a great legendary commander that gains power and toughness equal to all the total of cards in all players' hands. In a 5-player game, this can one-shot people. The Seeds of Innocence I like a lot because it's destroy all artifacts, and then in Commander, people need to be playing more of these because artifacts are definitely determining the meta. All the Soul Rings, all of the Mana Vaults and Mana Crypts, this is a perfect card to very, very. I know there's a 4-mana spell that does the exact same thing as this, but the more the merrier. Green has tons of ways to destroy artifacts, but this is just another one. Bone Dancer is a fun card by reanimating your opponent's cards. Urborg Justice is a great card. I've used this in Teysa decks before to make opponents sacrifice all their creatures. Polar Kraken just because of the mana. Tika's Dragon just because of the mana. Political Trickery in the deck that draws cards for how many cards your opponent has. You can also make them get a land that's terrible, that does a negative effect. Infernal Tribute is kind of cool because you can sacrifice any cards. So grab and go type strategies are kind of fun with this. There are a lot of cards at this $2 mark. Kesa, Bosium Strip, and Tombstone Stairwell. Tombstone Stairwell seems really, really cool. If you have it benefits everyone, and it benefits them all before it gets back to you. But once it gets back to you, if you have a self-mill deck, you can add so many 2/2 black creatures. So it says at the beginning of each upkeep, each player puts into play a token for each, a zombie token for each creature card in their graveyard. These are 2/2 that have haste. So if it comes to your turn, you have to wait a whole turn while your opponents get all the benefits, but it comes to your turn if you have a bunch of creatures in your graveyard. This is actually a pretty sweet card. So remember my Balfour the Defile deck? You could easily use this if you wanted to put it. And, you could one-shot someone. Because a lot of times I have like 10 cards easily in my graveyard. And then it puts out 10 2/2s. Well, not quite one-shot, but you can actually get a lot of benefit out of this. And do it for 2 turns before, you have the cumulative upkeep for that. And just keep dredging away stuff. And I think this is a pretty decent little card. You get up to the $3 mark, and there's definitely some really, really good cards here. It's kind of funny that some Homeland cards are already getting up to $3. Yeah, so kind of sweet. Let me know the ones that you particularly are investing in the reserve list. I just like these reserve lists because there's not a lot of... these just keep going up and up and up and up and up. And there's no chance of a reprint. And I'd avoid the cards that don't see have any sort of implications. I think they're just bad to invest in because besides collectors and people just banking on the reserve list, there's no point to it. EDH decks will never play them just because they're bad. Think of like Herald of Sarah, for example. Just pretty bad for what it does. There's just much better abilities. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll try to keep you up to date of stuff I'm investing in. If you are interested in up-to-date market alerts, I talked about Quicksilver Elemental for my patrons. I think Quicksilver Elemental is about to pop because there is not that many copies left of this card. Yep. I think this card's about to pop. The foil went... Oh, man, I was gonna invest in the foil. Whoops. Oh, well. Missed that one. But because of Marcel, this card is really, really good because it gains all activated abilities of target creature. So you give it its own activated abilities, and it creates like a combo with Marcel where you can activate all your abilities as many times you want. Because the clause of Marcel is you can only activate an ability once per turn, but the Quicksilver Elemental overrides that because it gains all the activated abilities that they could use. And so you gain all the abilities without the clause. And so it's perfect for Marcel. So anyway, that's Memory Monday, 50 minutes later. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be trying to talk about I'm going to try to get back to the rogue markets. We have rotated cards coming up. What other stuff have I been doing? I have a few top 10 videos for rogue markets coming up. I'll try to get on top of those. Anyway, this has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.